Ladies and gentlemen, I am Tosh Berman, and this is Tosh Talks. For this episode, I want to focus on Phil Spector. Phil Spector, I'm sure all of you know about or heard of, or heard his name mentioned quite recently. But I want to focus on the Phil Spector that I know and I personally love. And I discovered Phil Spector. I think my first Phil Spector recording that I was aware of was the Righteous Brothers' I Lost That Loving Feeling. And I only know that song. Well, first of all, I was around, maybe I was like 10 or 11 years old, and it used to be played on the radio consistently. But beyond that, my father, Wallace Berman, who's an artist, had a fixation on that song. And he bought the single when it came out. And when he's in his studio working on his artwork, he would play the Righteous Brothers' You Lost That Loving Feeling over and over and over again. And my job as a child at that time was to take care of the record player and the record. And my dad just requested that I play that one single over and over again. And when we're talking about playing that song over again, we're talking about not only 5 times straight in a row or even 10 times in a row, we're talking probably like 30 times in a row. We're talking like hours. It seemed to me at the time like hours of listening to You Lost That Loving Feeling. And the reasons why my dad liked that song, well, it's a great record, it's a great song, but I think it spoke to him in a sort of personal way, and that's how pop music works. It conveys, it's music for everybody, but individuals react to that song on a very individual basis. It's a very one-to-one relationship. So there's something in there that my father really, really loved about that particular song. And over the months and years, I sort of rediscovered Phil Spector. It was a long process, not just like 1 month or a year. It was like many years I sort of discovered Phil Spector's work by going back and forth, looking at oldies and the oldie singles, buying reissues of albums, recordings. And eventually I made my own discovery of Phil Spector. And what appealed to me about his work was his sense of drama, a sense of bigger than life in a sense. I have a feeling that he was not only making records, he was making a movie. But it's not a movie with a movie camera or something you see, it's a movie that you hear. It was like a visual, it's visually done, but done orally, you can only hear it. And the records are not a soundtrack to a movie, though it has been used many years later. For instance, the Ronettes' Be My Baby was used in Mean Streets, Martin Scorsese's Mean Streets. And for some, that's a soundtrack. But to me, Be My Baby and other Phil Spector songs relay a sense of theater, a sense of cinematic possibilities. It's a very visual sensibility. And a lot of his songs have a narrative of sorts. It's not just a love song to one to another. It has a story to it and has a narration to it. It's something that's sort of bigger than life. And what's fascinating about Spector is that his approach to recordings is like a movie. I can't say for sure he's the first record producer. He's not the first record producer, but he's surely the first quote unquote record producer. And meaning like Goldwyn Pictures or Columbia Pictures or Warner Brother Pictures. There's a Phil Spector production, meaning it's a stamp, it's a brand on his own work. So when you buy a Phil Spector record in the 60s, you're not just buying music, you're buying a whole presentation, a whole picture, a whole landscape. It's a landscape that's totally filled and controlled by Phil Spector. Now, saying that he controlled it, yes, but Phil Spector has worked with many talented people in his world. And Larry Levine, if I'm getting his name correctly, it was Phil Spector's main engineer. Then there's people like Sonny Bono, of Sonny and Cher fame, Leon Russell, Glenn Campbell. I'm leaving a lot of Carole Kane. There's like so many great musicians that work with Phil Spector. And also a very prominent Phil Spector's world in most of his songs, but not every song that he recorded or produced at that time, was Jack Nitzsche, who is another issue, another story, another narration, because Nitzsche is incredible composer, incredible producer, arranger, and so forth. And Nitzsche arranged a lot of the classic Phil Spector records. So it's like Phil Spector, the recording studio, Larry Levine, the Wrecking Crew. That's the name of the studio musicians that worked with Phil Spector at the time. It's like a great media mind, a great presentation, you know, and like Phil Spector is walking that room, knows what he's doing, he's thinking about everything, I think, you know, thinking how it's going, this, that. He is the general. But a general needs his army, needs his soldier, needs his colonels, needs his captains, lieutenants, sergeants, so forth. So when I say Phil Spector, I'm sort of speaking not only Phil Spector as a man, but Phil Spector as a company, as a production, as the iconic thing that's out there. And what's the beauty of his work is that from the very beginning, he made a record, or he had a group called the Teddy Bears. And the Teddy Bears were his first band his first recording adventure for Phil Spector. He put them together as a teenager. He went to Fairfax High School, the same high school that my father went to, for see the relationship. And the big Teddy Bear song is "To Know Him Is to Love Him," which Phil Spector wrote and produced and sang on and played guitar with the Teddy Bears. And the other Teddy Bears is Annette Bard, who is the lead singer of the Teddy Bears, the female, and Marshall Lieb, who is a fellow student of Phil Spector's and sang backup with Phil Spector. So it was like Lieb and Bard singing, Phil Spector singing backup as well, but he also plays electric guitar. And when you listen to the Teddy Bears, you can clearly hear Phil Spector's voice, and you can clearly hear his guitar playing. It's a very minimal production. There's echoes, you know, the echo in the vocals. I mean, it's definitely a produced record, but it's also in a very sense, compared to like the other Phil Spector recordings in the future, it's a very, very raw sound for Phil Spector. And when I listened to it casually, I think of the Teddy Bears as being a doo-wop band of that period, which fits perfectly during the late 50s, early 60s. But the Teddy Bears strike me as something beyond that. Again, I think from the very beginning, Phil Spector had this sort of cinematic sense. So now, with modern ears listening to Teddy Bears, the first thing I think about, if I didn't know about Phil Spector or his world, I would think of David Lynch and Blue Velvet and Twin Peaks. It has that sort of dark, mysterious, dangerous quality to the music that you can think of, you know, you immediately think of Lynch's work. But of course, you know, Phil Spector was before that. Phil Spector is, in a sense, David Lynch, but before David Lynch, if that makes sense. I think he has the sensibility of a David Lynch, but Phil Spector didn't make movies, he made music. And I think there's actually a Lynchian Spector meeting of the minds of sorts. I don't think David Lynch would agree with that, or he wouldn't even approve of what I'm saying, but I always felt there's a meeting of minds and of sorts. And of course with Martin Scorsese as well, with his whole Little Italy upbringing, of course the Phil Spector music of the Crystals and the Ronettes. And the Teddy Bears as well will be very prominent in his childhood. So that is another, you know, visual reference, that Scorsese thing. But To Know Him, to Love Him is a song about Phil Spector's father, who I believe committed suicide when Phil Spector was very young. And when you hear the song, it comes off as a love song between a man and a woman, or two lovers, or one who loves the other. You not immediately think, when you hear the song, it's a song about a son singing the song of love for his father. So once you realize that, that brings another element to this pop song, this you know, love song. And it's that sort of twistedness that sort of dark aspect of Phil Spector it's so appealing, but it's very dangerous. Phil Spector is very dangerous, obviously, but on top of it, his music is always dangerous. It's not a surprise what happened to him, which he went to prison, and the murder or supposed murder, alleged murder, or always guilty, I guess. But everything was laid out in his records to me in a funny way, because Phil Spector world is basically the world of teenagers, young people, not hippies, not yuppies, not situationists, not surrealists, but young urban teenagers of the 50s and 60s. But Phil Spector made music for the teenage market, but he himself was never a teenager. He felt the need of a teenager. He felt the love and the sensuality of being a teenager, but he was never that. He was always a strange creature or a strange adult looking in the teenage world. So whenever he's saying like songs about teenagers or love songs, it's not really from Phil Spector's personal life. It's a projected image that he put together with various great songwriters. And I'm sorry I didn't include the songwriting. Phil Spector wrote songs as well, but he worked with other songwriters, or other songwriters wrote songs for him. Everybody from Carole, Gerry, Goffin, and so forth and so forth. He had the whole real building songwriting teams working for his recordings, among other people as well. And the beauty of Phil Spector is that there's a distance between his subject matter and him. And I clearly hear it. Maybe other people don't hear it, but it's this distance in this the outsider approach that he looks at the subject matter is very beautiful and very touching. It's sort of like, again, like Scorsese looking at Mean Streets or even Taxi Driver. I never felt this is Scorsese's life per se, but he's definitely talking about people in his neighborhood or people he knows, and Spector is doing the same thing, but he's even more distant, because I don't think he even knows any teenager except when he was a teenager. And the other classic Phil Spector recordings I bought this during the 80s, and I kept rebuying these same records. And they reissued these in Europe, and this is like the Crystals sing their greatest hits, which is a great album. And then the other one, which I think most of you would probably be more familiar with, or one that you would hear in the radio more, is the Ronettes, including "Be My Baby," which is probably one of the most phenomenal songs ever. And like "Be My Baby" is considered like an inspiration for the Beach Boys, and I'm sure for lots of other music. The opening, first thing you hear on that record, "Be My Baby," is the drum rhythms. And it's like this introduction that can't be repeated anywhere else. It's like this a one at a time brilliant piece of introduction. And "Be My Baby" is a love song, but the melody is so sad. It's like an upbeat teenage song, but it's very sad. All Phil Spector songs have this sadness. The melody is very melancholic. It's very kind of depressing. I wouldn't say it's a manic depressive thing. It's more of a depressing. It's like being moody to very depressed. And "Be My Baby" is like a prayer of something chaotic to happen. It's like, be my baby now. And Ronnie Spector, Ronnie of the Ronettes was Phil Spector's wife. They had a very troubled relationship, apparently, is pleading in a sense, like, be my baby now. And she's not saying that in a moment of blissful happiness to me. To me, she's saying that in a moment of great despair, very troublesome times. And a lot of Phil Spector's music has that emotional feeling, or that sort of that despair. I feel a great sense of despair when I listen to a Phil Spector record. Some people listen to Joy Division for depression. Phil Spector is my Joy Division. He speaks to me in a very miserable tone sometimes. And even his upbeat, happy songs don't strike me as being fully happy, because right around that corner is that depression or that despair that he's going to hit against. And the Crystals, okay, there's the Ronettes, and Ronettes are fantastic, of course. There's Ronnie Spector, incredible singer. But then there's the Crystals. And the Crystals and the Ronettes, what they have in common, they're three girls, Black American girls, same songwriters, same people. But the Crystals have actually a more gritty reality thing going, and the Ronettes are actually more kind of romantic in a way, even though despairing romantic. They're not really on the earth. They're like eternal, like outer space, almost, like a spirit. Maybe because Phil Spector was in love with Ronnie Spector, and that's the way he pictured that. The Crystals were like sort of the Ronettes' younger, bratty sisters. And, they wrote songs like, well, they wrote songs, they performed songs like Uptown and what other great songs they have here. I'm just crazy. Oh, He's a Rebel, written by Gene Pitney. Incredible song, He's a Rebel. Another Country, Another World, that's fantastic. He's Sure the Boy I Love. Then He Kissed Me, on Broadway. I Love You, Eddie, a great song. And of course, Do Ra Ron Ron. My favorite, though, and the most disturbing song by the Crystals is written by Carole King and Gerry Goffin, and it's called He Hit Me, But It Felt Like a Kiss. Now, this is very interesting. I never heard a song. This song was written in like 62, 63. And there always been like sadomasochist imagery or abusement of some sort. But this song, unless it's some great country and Western song that I don't know nothing about, and I don't know nothing about that world, but for a teenage market rock and roll song, He Hit Me, But It Felt Like a Kiss, is to me not only extreme, not only out there, but probably, shamefully enough, a totally realistic song about a relationship that other people could identify with. And I'm not saying that with great pride or great, it's a tragedy. But it's interesting, the story I heard about this song, Hit Me But It Felt Like a Kiss, is that Carole King and Gerry Goffin, who were married, or a couple, the great songwriters of the 60s, had a babysitter. They had a family, and they had a babysitter, and the babysitter is Little Eve, who did the song Do the Locomotion. Great song. And Little Eve became a teenage sensation. But before that, she was a babysitter for Carole King and Gerry Goffin. And one day she showed up at work, or showed up at their house, and I guess her face was all bruised. Obviously she got beaten or been punched. And I hope I'm getting the story right. And if Little Eve is hearing this, if she's still around, I apologize. But what I've heard or read, the famous story is that Carole King said, "What happened to you? What's this?" And he said, "Well, my boyfriend hit me." And then I think they went, "Oh my God, that's terrible," And then, but Little Eve says, "But he hit me because he loved me." And I think in certain cultures, there are certain mental, weird sexual states or how relationships get together. That type of abuse, that type of violence exists. It exists to this day. And when you hear the song, The Crystals, He Hit Me, It Felt Like a Kiss, I think it's Darlene Love, who's the lead singer, is singing very matter-of-factly about a boyfriend who hits her because she was untrue to him, meaning she's sleeping with some other teenager or some other guy, and the boyfriend found out and he punched her. And when he punched her, it felt like a kiss because that's his way of showing love to her. So the fact that he punched her, in her mind, that means love. And the way Darlene Love and the Crystals sing the song, it's basically stating this fact. So this is very interesting. So when you hear the song, I'm hearing this sort of abuse, or this okay, say it's not abuse, it's a romantic love. Boyfriend is jealous, hits her, they love, they kiss, they make up. Happy story, correct? Of course, you know he's going to punch her again and again and again in the near future. But this, I don't know. This is what I wonder. I wonder when teenagers or people heard that song, if they pick up like the violence as being shocking, or just like, yeah, it happened to me, or yeah, it happened to the neighbors, or it's like such a common existence. And that's actually the shocking aspect of the song, is the way it doesn't have, the song has no moral stance whatsoever. It's just like reporting a story. And for sure, I am going to presume that Carole King and Gerry Goffin thought this is really weird, or disturbing, that their teenage babysitter's getting punched by her boyfriend. I don't think they like that or approve of that. But in their art, they made this into a story without giving any moral or any type, not making a decision on, just telling you the facts of sort. A story. The story is, she cheated on him, he punched her. She loved that in a sorts, because that proves the love that she wanted. So everything's fine, which of course it isn't. It isn't fine. So what's interesting, of course, is then, through the years, we learn more about Phil Spector's love for guns and sort of threatening violence. And this is all alleged, I'm not, I met Phil Spector 2 or 3 times personally. And a couple of times I met him, he was a total angel, a total divine, wonderful person. I have also met him when he was not divine and wonderful person. And you can read about it in my book, Tosh, later. But what's interesting is that, this is all laid out in a funny way, through maybe like for other songwriters, narrations and stuff. Phil Spector, there's this sense of violence and this disruption, this sort of American family being exploded and torn apart. And, Phil Spector was just brilliant at capturing that world. He's as brilliant as Picasso painting a model, Renoir painting a model, Scorsese capturing the mean streets, the Italian family, mafia, gangsters, sorry, I meant to use the word mafia, landscape, Kenneth Anger using the gay imagery or the iconic gay imagery, and Scorpio Rising by using some of He's a Rebel by by the Crystals, and I think he used a couple other Phil Spector related songs there. Nothing is by accident. An artist picks up something and hears what's happening on the street or somewhere outside, makes it into something. It seems to be mass market made, but another artist hears it, like Scorsese or Kenneth Anger, and they hear the same thing and it becomes something else. And then David Lynch hears something that seems like mundane, like Blue Velvet, the song, but he gives it a sinister quality because he realized there is a sinister quality to that song. It's always there, but Lynch points it out more, he brings it out more. And Phil Spector is not the originator, but Phil Spector looks at the world, sucks up the poison out, and he puts that poison in his records. And that is why I love Phil Spector's work. And this is Tosh Berman, Tosh Talks. Thank you.